I want you to picture the most unshakable person you've ever met. Not someone who never gets hurt, not someone who pretends everything is fine, but someone who, when the floor drops out from under them, somehow finds their footing before anyone else in the room even realizes what happened. You've seen this person, music, maybe once, maybe in passing, and something about them stayed with you because they had something you couldn't quite name. That thing has a name, music. It's always had one. The Stoics spent 5 centuries trying to teach it. Not in music lecture halls, not to people who had easy lives and wanted to keep them that way, to soldiers, music, to grieving fathers, to men sitting in prison the night before their execution. The philosophy was forged in the kind of heat that burns everything fake away. And what survived was simple, brutal, and true. Here are the 6 principles at the center of it. The first one is about where you're pointing your energy. And most people are pointing it in exactly the wrong direction. Think about the last time something bothered music you, really sat with you, kept you up, chewed at the back of your mind while you were trying to do something music else. Now ask yourself honestly, was there anything you could actually do about it? Or were you burning yourself down over something that was never in your hands to begin with? The Stoics' music drew a line right down the middle of human experience. On one side, everything you can influence, your music choices, your effort, your attitude, your next move. On the other side, everything you cannot, what people think of music, you, how things turn out, what other people decide to do. The Stoics weren't interested in the second list, not because they didn't care, but because they understood something most people never do. Worrying about what you can't control isn't caution. It's self-destruction dressed up as responsibility. Every morning you wake up, music, you're handed a limited amount of energy. The only question is which side of that line you're going to spend it on. The second principle is music about the story you tell yourself the moment something goes wrong. Here's what happens in the brain during a bad moment. Something occurs, and before you've even finished processing music, the facts, your mind has already written a full narrative around it. It's decided what it means. It's decided music, what comes next. It's decided usually that things are worse than they are. Seneca wrote about a man who convinced himself he was dying from an illness he didn't have, and the suffering he experienced was completely real, even though the cause was entirely invented. Music, he wasn't mocking the man, he was pointing at something universal. We are all at times suffering from stories we made up. The Stoic practice here is almost surgical. Music, you take the event and you strip it down. What actually happened, not what it means, not what it says about music not what comes next. Just what is the bare factual thing that music occurred. You'd be surprised how often that bare fact is survivable. It's the interpretation music that kills you. The third principle is one that modern life has made almost impossible: music to sell. But the Stoics considered it non-negotiable. They believed that difficulty was not something to be managed or minimized. It was something to be sought. Music not masochistically, strategically, because they understood that a person who has never been tested doesn't actually know what they're made of. They just have a theory about it. Seneca used to deliberately choose the harder option. Not always, not dramatically, but enough to keep himself honest. He wanted to know that if everything he had was taken away, he wouldn't collapse. And the only way to know that, really know it, not just believe it, was to practice it. There's a version of this available to all of us every single day. The discomfort you've been avoiding, the difficult conversation you've been postponing, the thing that scares you just enough that you keep finding reasons to do it later. The Stoics' music would tell you that later is the place where your potential goes to die. The difficult thing is the music path, not a detour from it. The fourth principle, music will make you uncomfortable, and that's exactly why it works. The Stoics thought about death music regularly, deliberately, not out of morbidity, out of precision, because they noticed that music people who forgot they were going to die made consistently terrible decisions. They burned time on things that didn't matter. Music. They let years pass without saying the things that needed to be said. Music. They postponed the life they actually wanted for a version of safety that turned out music not to be safe at all. When you remember, genuinely remember, not just acknowledge intellectually that this is finite, music, something shifts. The argument you were about to let ruin your week suddenly looks different. At music, the opportunity you were too afraid to take looks different. The person sitting across from you at dinner, music looks different. This is not a dark practice. It is one of the most clarifying things a human being can do. The Stoics called it keeping death in your peripheral vision. Not staring at it, just letting it remind music you quietly, constantly, that the clock is moving and you have music things to do. The fifth principle is about building a kind of inner wealth that music, nothing outside of you can touch. Most people build their sense of stability on things that music can be taken away. A job, a relationship, a reputation, a bank balance. Music. And then when one of those things disappears, and at some point something always does, music don't just lose the thing, they lose themselves along with it. The Stoics were obsessed with what music called the inner citadel. The idea that somewhere inside you there is a place that circumstances music cannot reach. A place where your values live, where your character lives, where your capacity music to choose how you respond to things lives. And the whole project of Stoic practice was essentially this: build that place up, reinforce it, go there when everything outside is chaos. You build it the same way you build anything. By music, showing up to it repeatedly, by making choices that align with your values even when it's inconvenient, by being the same person in the hard moments that you are in the easy ones over time. That music consistency becomes an armor, not the kind that keeps feeling out, the kind that keeps being music destroyed in. The sixth and final principle is the one that ties everything together, and it's music, the one people most often skip. The Stoics believed that a human life lived only for music itself was a diminished life, not immoral. Diminished music, like a musician who only ever plays alone in a room. Technically accomplished music, maybe, but missing the entire point. Marcus Aurelius, music not as emperor, not as philosopher, but as a man who genuinely struggled with whether music he was doing enough, wrote to himself again and again about the pull toward comfort and retreat. And again he talked music himself back to the same place, other people, the shared life. Music, the responsibility to contribute to something that would outlast him. There is a strange mathematics to this. When you stop making your own comfort the center of your existence, the things that used to music disturb you lose about half their power, because disturbance requires a self that music is easily threatened, and a self that is oriented outward toward purpose, toward people. Music toward contribution is a much harder target. 6 principles, not 6 ideas to think about, 6 things to actually music do. Draw the line between what you control and what you don't. Strip your stories down to facts. Stop avoiding difficulty. Music. Keep death close enough to stay honest. Build something inside you that the world can't take. And make your life about more music than just yourself. None of this is comfortable. All of it works. The most unshakable music people you've ever met weren't born that way. They built it one choice at a time in exactly the moments they least felt like making the right one. You can do the same thing starting music now.